Something that was unholy and contained now gets an ultimate release. Here's your look at the brand new NECA toys, the Conjuring universe, the Nun Ultimate Valak. From The Nun, the terrifying movie in the Conjuring universe, the demon Valak gets the ultimate action figure treatment. This 7-inch scale figure is based on the demon's manifestation as a nun and features a full fabric habit. Is highly articulated, comes with interchangeable heads and hands when you want to take the horror to the next level. Includes orb, painting, and display stand. Comes in a display-worthy window box packaging with open front flap. Wait a minute, nuns don't work on Sundays. Before, of course, we get a closer look, that's a joke to Magnum P.I., an 80s series, if anybody was wondering. Let's grab the tape measure and see how tall the ultimate Valak stands. Now, he or she, if you prefer, is only about 6.5 inches in height, or Valak is about 17 centimeters tall. Well, it would seem that we're back in the habit of looking at nun figures. Not too long ago, we re-looked at the retro cloth release of the Nun Valak. You can see there's definitely a size difference between the two. And sticking with the Conjuring universe, here's as well what the Nun Valak looks like with the evil doll Annabelle. Valak does come included with 7 accessories, although right now you're only looking at 5. The other 2, by the way, just happens to be a display stand that's currently keeping Valak upright. And as well, I've also added the cross. The cross I just knew was something I was going to lose, so I took the liberty of already adding that. It's just a case of popping the head off and just draping, of course, the cross around her neck, his neck, and then, of course, just popping the head back in place. You really don't even have to really take the head off. All you really need to take the veil off, and then you can easily just fit the cross around his neck that way. I did also say as well that this figure comes included with a display stand. It's a small enough stand, but it does the job, because with the small feet, unfortunately for Valak, he has some difficult time to stand. So just standing him on his own, he's going to teeter a little bit. I'm glad to see that the folks over at NECA Toys did, in fact, include a display stand. So we'll just go ahead and reattach that onto the feet. The feet have a little bit of a problem. We'll talk more about that in a moment. First, though, the figure comes included with the painting. The painting, I'll tell you right away, I'm a little disappointed with. Not the fact that it's been printed to look like the painting from The Conjuring 2, but more for the fact it's actually been done here on cardboard. On the back, it looks like stretched canvas. It even has, of course, the board frame, but just disappointed by the fact it had to be cardboard. I know usually with accessories like this, newspapers, paintings, anything that was really made of paper or something similar like that in a TV or movie series usually then gets replicated in cardboard. I just always really worry that cardboard just doesn't have longevity to it. It does fit, though, in the hands of Valak, although not easy. You kind of have to bring the arms up a little bit. And actually, if you really look at the hands, too, the way they've got the fingers, you can kind of slot the painting and have them resting on the fingers, but you really want to make sure the hands are as close together as you can get them, just, again, to kind of rest them on there. Like I said, it's not an easy thing to do. It's more of just a balancing act than anything else, but you can have Valak actually holding the painting. It's just not super easy, that's all. The figure also comes included with a bunch of other things, like, for example, swappable hands. Now, the hands don't look that much different from the hands that we have right now. I have popped already one of the hands off. It may have been more the relaxed hand, the very skinny looking fingers stretching out to grab you, nicely painted for what they are. I've already, again, popped this one off and I replaced it with another kind of mauling hand, but he also comes included with another hand that basically is not that far different from the one that we already get here. I mean, if you really look at the hands, they are almost identical to one another, which really does beg the question, why would they have even included this hand if it simply is just the same one as the other one? Popping out the hands, by the way, is just a case. Let's not remove the veil in the process. You just sort of have to wiggle them back and forth. The posts at least are long enough, but you do want to still wiggle them either way, just to ensure that you're not breaking the peg off in the process. Not to be spitting on everybody doing that. The figure also comes included with the orb that holds inside the blood of Christ. You can see, or maybe you'd be able to see there, that it actually has already been cracked. A nice little touch to add that as a reference to the movie. Nicely done. It's mostly done here in a translucent clear plastic. And then they've painted actually the frame of the gold nicely in paint. The chain itself is a real chain. That's nice to see, as opposed to just sculpting in place. And it does, I suppose you could loop it around the arm of Valak if you want to, as a possibility of way of displaying the figure. The last thing that comes included with Valak is an alternate portrait that has the screaming face. I did want to bring in the one that we got here from the Ultimate, or the retro cloth release, so you can see the difference between the two. I will say, like, I think I like the sculpting better on the Ultimate release, but I think I like the paint a lot more on the Retro release. The Retro brings some necessary dark blacks around the areas of the lips and the eyes. I feel in a way it's almost too faded here with the Ultimate release. I would have just brought the colors up a little bit more to match that of the Retro cloth release. The Retro also benefits from having more visible veins there on the tops of what Bonnie Aarons, the actress that played, of course, the nun. I just think, like, this is a better painted head sculpt, but I think I like the sculpting on this one just a little bit more. If only they could have just Frankenstein the two together to give us an ultimate, literally an ultimate version of Valak's head sculpt with this kind of paint and this kind of sculpt. Changing out the head, by the way, is just a case. First of all, you want to remove the veil. I did want to, I suppose, show you guys what the defaulted head sculpt looks like. More of just a neutral expression of Valak's face to bring back in the one that we got here from the Retro cloth release. The veil keeps falling off. Sorry for that. You can see again, like, it's very similar, but I feel like the paint is a little bit better handled here when the Retro cloth release than what we got with the Ultimate. Changing out the head, by the way, is just a case of removing the veil once again. You want to make sure that you don't lose the cross in the process. So I'm just going to pop the head off the existing ball joint. One thing that kind of had me perplexed was the fact that they decided to use, of all things, the larger ball joints on the top of the head. Instead of actually using just that little post, we've gotten that lots of times, like mostly like the Jason Voorhees figures have usually had like a little post cylinder. I'm surprised they didn't do something similar to that instead of using a ball joint. Ball joint just seems like outdated, honestly, because just again, like if you're changing out the heads, all you really need to do is make sure that, ensure at least, that head attaches properly. Because with the ball joints, I just noticed that it never stays properly. You really have to work a lot harder to get a head like this on a ball joint than you really would with a post or a cylinder. Again, just getting the head. I had this easier done earlier. You may even want to heat this up with a little bit of hot water. And again, the head would just basically pop in place like that. I think the plastic has cooled just a little bit. I don't want to spend the entire review, of course, just trying to get this blasted head on here, but we'll just kind of twist it on as best as we can get it. Do I have it all the way on there? I don't. The thing I'm worried also about is I just don't want to break the cross string. You know what I'll do is we'll come back to that evil head sculpt as we get to the final looks of the figure. Let's just get the original defaulted head sculpt in place, and we'll put the veil back in. Just remind me if you can. Everybody, can you remind me? We'll put the evil head sculpt back on Valak's body, and we jump over to the final looks with that. Okay, thank you very much. So obviously we're not going to change the head just yet. I might have to go back and just heat it again, but just to show you what the anchor head sculpt looks like with the more neutral expression. I prefer really to honestly have all my nuns usually just display with the neutral expressions. I think it's a little creepier than having them always just screaming like this. On the back of all of them, by the way, you can have the bonnet. Is it the bonnet? Is tied up very nicely on the back of the nun's head. So nicely sculpted there as well, even though you really wouldn't ever really get the chance to see that unless you take the veil off. And then, of course, for the rest of the habit, it consists of course, the top piece. Of course, you've got the bonnet, you've got the main shoulder piece that goes across. I'm not as up to date when it comes to the nun's attire. And, of course, you've got the little belt there as well that's all done nicely in a rubberized material. The hands themselves, by the way, if you just get the veil back on, I don't know if you've already noticed, but the fact that the veil actually does have a wire frame. So it runs from the top and it runs all the way down the side. So you can usually manipulate this. I had done that before with the Retro release, but the problem with that, though, is when you bend it too much, then it's always the hardest thing to try to get it straight again. So I'm not going to really try to move it around too much. For the arms, though, one thing I really like about the arms is that they're very, very thin. Nicely detailed. The paint doesn't just stop at the wrist. It continues its merry little way up the forearms as well. And you got that little off coloring of the skin. Really, again, thin looking hands. For her legs, his legs, I keep doing that, bringing up the dress a little bit. It's actually got a couple of layers to it. Sort of, you've got the main black dress, and then you've got that little swatch of fabric that drapes over top of it. Somewhat indecent for a nun, but just to lift up the dress so you can actually see what it looks like underneath. The legs are the one thing that I've noticed is really tight in this figure. I always kind of have the legs kind of in a more bent formation like this, just because I find it's easier for the legs to stand straight. If you actually had the legs bent or straight like this, I find the figure wobbles a little bit more. So I compensate a little bit by having the knees bent like this. And you can see as well, there's the ankles. The ankles aren't quite the same coloring because obviously they would have used plastic here and they would have just tried to replicate that. But to be honestly fair, you're only going to be seeing all of it's buried anyways by outfit. So you never really would be able to see what it looks like underneath the skirt. Now for the articulation on the nun, we're just going to keep the veil off for right now. The nun's head is going to be on that ball joint, as frustrating as it may be. Rotates the head all the way around. The head looks up and down and back and forth. The upper body also is one thing that does have, it seems to be like a ball joint. Although for me at least, trying to rotate it, I only can seem to swivel it back and forth. it doesn't have as much as of an easier time of bending up and down this way. The arms come out at 90 degrees. And of course, you can take those arms and move them forward, and you can move them back. He has a swivel there at the top there. It also has a hinge in the elbow, just to bring up, by the way, the elbows. I wanted to show you guys. It's not a completely bare arm all the way up. You actually get yourself a bit of a sleeve there as well. I don't know why they would have actually sculpted so much there, considering it'd be covered by anyways the fabric. But you can see it's a little bit different. It's not completely a bare arm all the way up. Now, the figure does have a split on the legs. You can bring the legs forward, bring the legs back, and actually just to bring this up a little bit, there's a swivel at the top only by just the way it's been assembled. There's a single hinge in the knee that allows the lower leg to rotate. And then the ankles move back and forth this way, and you can also rock them back and forth this way as well. I know I did already state this, but stating it again, there's peg holes in the undersides of Valak's feet. So again, you can make use of that display stand, which I definitely will be using. Thank goodness they did have one, because I think on its own, the feet are way too small to accommodate a proper stance. And again, we'll just get Valak to stand as best as we can get it. Go ahead and get the veil over top of the head as well. I like the look of this Valak. I'm almost even tempted as well to get a second one of these so I can have one displayed with the anchor portrait, even though I really prefer the neutral expression. That way I can have two different ways of displaying Valak on the shelf. I haven't yet done that with the retro cloth release. Speaking of the retro cloth release, let's bring him in there so you can see the differences between the two. Yeah, no, overall, from head to toe, I think this is a better constructed nun. But I got to say, like, the paintwork is still much better on the retro cloth release. The color's a little bit more richer. The blacks around the eyes and blacks around the mouth is a lot more, there's a nicer contrast with, I think, the way they've painted the head sculpt on this one that doesn't quite live up to it when it comes to the ultimate release. Other than that, though, I mean, obviously, if you are collecting more of the ultimate figures, you're probably just going to be completely passing on the idea of getting a retro cloth release. But again, like, I do think between the two, this one's painted better, this one's constructed better. But if you did want to get yourself an ultimate release, I'm not disappointed by what they've actually done with the figure release here. I ended up taking a little bit of holy water, hot holy water to be exact, and heated the bottom of the head for at least the angrier portrait so it would easily plug properly in place onto the ball joint. Still, I'm a little confused as to why NECA decided to use a ball joint on the top of the head. Considering you got a small frame like this, putting any bit of pressure could potentially have broken that post. I think rather they should have just used this cylinder post, something that we would have gotten with like the Jason Voorhees figures. I think it just would have been a lot easier to attach the head. I wonder what specifically dictates when they decide to use a ball joint over a post system. Because again, for the smaller frame here, Bonnie Aarons is the nun, I just think it would have made more sense to use the post rather than the ball joint. The figure is nice for what it is. I still think, like, again, as I already mentioned in this review a couple of times, the paint's handled better on the retro cloth release, but not slouching at all. This one actually turned out to be a really nice looking figure. I know some people just generally don't like the retro cloth release figures, and I get that. If you are one that prefer to get, say, the ultimate release figures, then you're obviously going to be in the market of getting this one over the retro cloth release, and I get that. This one has a better looking body, because of course it's not utilizing the same retro cloth bodies that we always get with most of the figures. Like the female figures usually have their designated female bodies, unless you're like B. Arthur. B. Arthur from the Golden Girls, her retro cloth release actually used a male body. But I digress. This one actually does have, again, that thinner frame. And it does benefit one thing also as well. This has the additional accessories that the retro cloth release didn't have. Retro's nun only came with a alternate head portrait, and that was it. This one actually comes with the orb, although it's empty and it doesn't have the blood of Christ anymore inside. It does also come with a painting. A little disappointed that it had to be cardboard, and it does also come with some swappable heads, not to mention, again, the two alternate head sculpts. Yeah, a nice looking figure for this one. I mean, if you guys are interested to get this one for yourself, the Ultimate Nun Valak is available right now in retail stores and online. If you guys already had the chance to pick up this one, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of it. And of the two nuns that we've gotten from NECA Toys, which one do you think is a better looking figure? Is it the retro cloth release, or is it the ultimate version of Nun Valak? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also as well, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit the like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you'd like to stick around for more, we are going to be looking at some more NECA reviews. I know that's sometimes for most of you guys the thing you like to come back to this channel for. I like to think you're coming back to this channel for other things as well, but we definitely have a lot more NECA reviews lined up and coming your way also. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.